All right, welcome into our overtime segment here at SportsSource.tv. Appreciate you joining us this afternoon. We answer some of your questions, some of the questions I've got via Twitter or email. We're going to start. I don't think this is ever going to go away. There is a group that believe Bruce Pearl should be the governor of Tennessee, the president at UT, the coach at UT, football, basketball, baseball, Lady Vols, whatever. Bruce Pearl, the sun rises and falls in his shadow. Bruce Pearl beats Kentucky yesterday. A lot of people said, I dare you to talk about it. Well, why? It's a Tennessee show. I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking about Auburn basketball. But your thoughts on Bruce Pearl getting the upset against Kentucky, which the bigger story to me there is kind of Kentucky's having some serious issues this year. But
good for Bruce Pearl. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you can say is good for him. I liked him when he was coaching at Tennessee. Hate the way it ended. Good for him. I hope his success at Auburn is good but limited.
Yeah, not as good as Tennessee.
Not as good as Tennessee.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he's 6-17 in SEC games since he's been at Auburn. So that was a big win for him, good for him. But he's not exactly knocked people's socks off with what he's done at Auburn so far.
And he's got more talent than Rick Barnes does, and his record is one game worse than Rick Barnes right now in terms of overall.
But I'm like Bob. I like Bruce Pearl a lot. You know, when he was here, I enjoyed covering him.
And that was 14th ranked Kentucky that you beat. So is Kentucky going to fall out of the top 20? And how overrated has Kentucky been?
But see, here's the problem with that. They're always overrated because they're always bringing in 5 new freshmen, and everybody just assumes, they'll be great.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. I didn't think Calipari was as good a coach as he is. Now, people would look at it and say he had one team that went to the NIT. This team isn't looking great. Yeah, but what is it, 6 out of 7 years, or 5 out of 7 years, he's managed to play the alchemist and put 5 new guys together for the most part. He's had to put 4 new guys together, and he's made it work. But yeah, I think they are overrated every year because how can you rank Kentucky anywhere when they have who's seen any of these players play at the college level before, much less play together before, and yet they're going to be number 1 every year because he gets this top recruiting class.
Right.
Well, sometimes they don't end up being overrated, but at the start of the year, it is amazing how much stock they put in these freshmen. And part of that is that in basketball, usually you hit a higher percentage, but still you don't know about the chemistry of that team, and that's why one year they did go to the NIT. Yeah. And I talked to an SEC coach not long ago who said that he thinks this is on par with his worst team at Kentucky, which went to the NIT. This coach doesn't like this team at Kentucky right now.
Well, I just think you look at it, and we've talked about this before. I really thought that he would have trouble meshing the egos, and a couple of times he has, but for the most part, I mean, all of these guys were scorers in high school. The vast majority of them were scorers in high school because that's how you become the 5-star guy that everybody wants. They were the man on their high school team. And now you're taking a bunch of guys who are used to being the man.
Yep.
They're going to the number 1 program. The camera's on them. Everybody's telling them, you are the best. And you're saying, okay, now you have to be a team.
Yeah.
That takes some work. I'll credit him that he does it more times than not.
And a big part of that to me is a lot of these guys didn't get to where they were by playing defense. And you get to Kentucky, you got to play some. I don't care how good you are offensively, and that's been, I think, one of their big problems. And some of these, like number 1 recruit, they never really matched up against some of this talent they're facing now.
But going back to your point about Calipari, his defenses in the SEC have been among the best, which tells me he's doing a good job of coaching those guys to get them to buy in to play defense.
Because you don't typically see freshmen come in wanting to play defense. Again, they've made their bones scoring.
Right.
So, yeah. Rick Barnes, you had something you want to get in on Rick Barnes.
Yeah, there was something Rick Barnes, before the year, said I thought was really interesting. He said that he had followed the careers of course, Bobby Knight and Dean Smith, and late in their careers, neither one of them did real well, and part of the reason was their defense didn't play as well. So he talked to both of them, and both of them said that they were actually more interested in coaching offense. Well, Rick Barnes said, I'm at that point. I'm more interested now in coaching offense, and he's done that. Now, you can't ignore defense, certainly. But one of the things he also said the other day with his own offense struggling is that he was going to run a man-to-man offense against his own defense. Wow. And I think he did some of that against Mississippi State, and I thought it paid off.
It's impressive. Mark talked about it during the show today. You know, the record's 9-8, so nobody's going to be throwing a parade downtown anytime soon. But when you look at the roster he inherited, and again, when you change coaches every other year or every year, the roster is going to be thinned out. That's just part of it. And he's taken a roster that has no bigs basically, and he's managed to get them in the conversation for the NIT at this point. I mean, they're certainly in the bubble, if you will, for the NIT at this point. And I didn't expect them to be an NIT level team before the season. Even Mark discussed it. Mike Strange, who's Mr. Basketball, and Isaiah Victor, always upbeat. But I think the goal was, gosh, if you can even get in the NIT conversation, you've done some good work. Right now, I think they're in that conversation.
Well, I do too. And the thing that I'm impressed about what Barnes has done is look at how many different players have improved. Punter's better, Moore's better, Mostello has improved. Almost everybody on that roster is better than he was a year ago, which I think points to pretty good coaching.
And the announcers keep saying the starting lineup averages 6'4", and that's like what the shortest.
Well, your tallest guy yesterday was 6'5".
Yeah, and that's like the shortest starting lineup in the country. To put it in perspective of what you're accomplishing with that.
Yeah, see, it's hard for me to imagine winning against anyone when you were that small. It just seems like the job would be a lot easier for the other team. Just throw it there in the paint. Just keep going to the paint. So they've gotten more out of this roster than I ever expected. Go back to something that, just to clarify, we talked about early in the show, first segment as a matter of fact, the Alvin Kamara thing. My view on Kamara, in a perfect world, a coach wouldn't have to re-recruit somebody. And I wonder if a Nick Saban, for example, with the talent he's got at Alabama, I wonder how much he spends, how many meetings he spends with parents saying, okay, now here we've got some charts for you, and we're going to show you exactly what we're going to do for your son and how we're going to make him a focal point. He may do that. I don't know that he does. I understand that Butch Jones has to do that. He needs Alvin Kamara. I get that. It's just in a perfect world, I'm a traditionalist, I guess. I'd like to see a guy say, I'm on the team. Whatever you need me for, Coach, I'm here.
Yeah,
But-
and it's like, and you and I talked about it. If I'm Butch Jones, I say, you're going to play football. See you. But I think, I just don't think you can do that. And likewise,
No, you can't.
I just think that Kamara's parents, I mean, once again, and I said it during the show, I understand them coming in and having those questions. But, the real answer, truthful answer is, we don't know how we're going to use you because we don't know how the games are going to go.
Exactly.
We would like to go in there and say we're going to use you 15 times a game. Well, guess what? We jumped out to a huge lead. We weren't going to throw you swing passes. We weren't going to bring you around on inside reverses. So we're not going to do that. So that's the real answer, is they don't know.
Well, and I understand the parents are wondering how much their son's going to be used. So what's that going to do to his draft stock next year? Is it going to be higher than it is this year? I get that. But the other thing, this team should be better this year. So you should expect more victories like you had against Kentucky and Vanderbilt,
Yeah.
bigger blowouts. Do you put Kamara out there and let him get hurt?
That's a very good question.
It'd be the other backup, John Kelly. Step in there, son, rather than having one of my two best players out there doing that. But also the thing is, here's the question that I have. Let's say you promise a player, not just Kamara, but any player, we're going to use you ABC. This is how you're going to be used. And then you don't use him like
you
that.
set yourself up.
Well, what does that do for your team chemistry? Does this guy become a malcontent because, well, you promised me? Are you going to spend half your time dealing with mama or daddy? That would be the concern is, if you promise something and can't deliver on it, does that guy become a bit of a cancer in the locker room at all?
That's the reason all my answers are going to be couched in, we plan to, we would like to, here's what we're looking at, and do it that way to where you don't come out and say you are going to get the ball. I mean, face it, next year about the only thing you can say about Tennessee's offense right now is at this point in time on this date, Josh Dobbs is going to be your starting quarterback. Jalen Hurd's going to be your starting running back. Everything else after that gets kind of fuzzy.
Going back to something Rick Barnes said, I think there were 600 basketball players that transferred last year. And he said the number one reason, coaches overpromised them. You got to be careful with that. There are 8 quarterbacks that have already transferred out of the SEC this year. 8 of them.
And Texas A&M had 6, didn't it?
6 in over a 3-year period, I think.
Well, you lose 8 guys. Like now here, there are people that are quickly screaming at their laptop here that, well, Kamara ain't going to transfer nowhere. He just go to the pros. Well, he's got another year. He could turn pro early next. He's just going to be a junior next year.
Yes.
So if you overpromise, there are consequences. It's not like if you get him back this year, you've got him. This is his last year. Technically, there could be another year after that. But I think the way they're taking it down to the line this year,
That next year's a done deal
I think
unless
next
something
year's-
odd happens.
yeah, I
Yeah.
would think unless this is all just for show and he likes the attention. I think it's pretty clear next year they're going to go unless some weird thing happens, injury or something. But here's my question about that, and we've talked about it a little on the show previously, and I was very quickly. How concerned are you? You're going to build up to 2016. This is going to be a good year.
And then
2017.
You got a lot of sophomores this year. They're going to be juniors that can go early, and it's hard to look at LSU. Hard to replace guys when you can't plan for them departing. Thoughts on this team? I have a feeling it's going to be 2016, 2017, and then you're hoping 18, 19, 20 goes up from there. But I think you're going to have a step back in 2017.
I think it's a real concern. I mean, you look at the junior class that you're going to have. I mean, that's what you built this program with, coming up to now, as they were freshmen, sophomore, and junior. So I think it's a very legitimate concern, and you better plug some of those holes in recruiting to be ready for that.
Well, we talked about how big it was that Maben and Sutton are coming back.
Yeah.
Well, they're gone. So obviously that's going to hurt you on defense. A big part of what's going to happen in 17 is how good your quarterback going to be too. Who's he going to be and how good is he going to be? And I think that's going to play a significant role in Tennessee.
And does whoever doesn't win, and does the person who doesn't win that conference
Leave.
Yeah, leave. Doesn't win that competition, leave.
Yeah, one's already gone.
Well,
So, all right, guys, thank you very much. Chuck, Jimmy, Bob, I didn't introduce you earlier because you don't need introductions. Everyone knows your name. We will see you
Cheers.
next Sunday on WATE TV. Yeah, don't say cheers too closely to Chuck. All right. We know, this was online. I didn't do it on TV. We'll see you next Sunday on Channel 6, 11 a.m. for the Sports Source. See you then.